How's it going, everyone? Mike here with Tressa's Collectibles.
And I'm Randall, aka Shizukatz.
And I'm Simu, Samuel, also known as Chairman.
And welcome to the second video of our Slime 2 content block, where we will be talking about 8 Choice, the second new deck to come out from Slime Volume 2. 8 Choice is another unique build featuring the titular 8 Choice Climaxes, featuring 4 of the new double rare Xion, and the 4 of the new double rare Rimu combos. The level 1 Xion is if you have a full board on attack, she gets to salvage any character from your waiting room. And then the level 3 Rimu is really the reason why we want to play 8 Choice, a healer that can attack multiple times in terms of summoning more copies of itself or another character from your waiting room. So a very powerful way to push for damage, push for game, and at the same time, this Rimu can actually heal multiple times as well. This Rimu being able to summon another copy of itself from the waiting room, and then when he's played from hand or from the effect of himself, you can heal again. So healing multiple times, attacking multiple times, and generally being a very cost-efficient finisher. Now, the 8 Choice build is actually very flexible in terms of deck building. The only real requirement is having the 8 Choice Climaxes, because Rimu's summon condition for the Climax combo is that you mill 2 cards, and they are either on trait or they're a yellow Climax. Now, given what we have to work with Slime 2, the only realistic options for the 8 yellow Climaxes are the level 1 Xion combo and its own Rimu level 3 combo. That being said, in this video, we are going to be going over 3 different deck lists. First, we're going to be looking at a typical Japanese deck list that people really like to play in Japan. And then we're going to be going over Randall's take on his version of 8 Choice. And then finally, we're going to be going over Simu's version of 8 Choice as well. So going into the Japanese list, you guys can take a look here and check out. This is a pretty standard version of a Japanese 8 Choice slime. Features a very typical level 0 lane, a very level 0 game with the Milim Chaser, the Shizu level 0 double rares, a couple of the level 0 Riki Rimuru, some Brainstorms, and then some on death top check 4 at a level 1 or higher. Removes for milling. Level 1, we have the 4 Xion Climax combos. We also have 3 Ramorous. Ramorous, obviously, you guys know if you play Slime 1, Ramorous is a card that is very powerful at giving you a +1 straight, and then also allows you to help you do multiple Climax combos and stuff. Just all around very solid card. And then the important thing to know about this list and how it's going to be very different from Randall and Simu's lists is that it runs this new early play package featuring this level 3 Xion and the level 3 Ranga. The level 3 Ranga gets -1 level in your hand if you have 2 or more of the level 3 Xion in your waiting room. And then on play, you can pay 1 stock to summon one of the level 3 Xions from your waiting room onto the board. The Xion herself has, on attack, you can pay 1, discard 1 to heal 1, and then on the turn she is summoned. Until the end of your opponent's next turn, she gets 4,500 power, and then during this card's battle, your opponent cannot use any backups. So this is their level 3 package of choice. Alongside this package, we do have 2 of the early play Xion healers from set 1. And then for our level 3, to supplement the 4 Rimu finishers, we do play a copy of the Gazelle to be able to help out with poor situations such as, like, for example, if your opponent has a full standby board with a memory counter. Memory counter really screws over Rimuru, because if he gets kicked away with a memory counter, he can't activate his Climax combo. So having a Gazelle in your deck really does help out, so he can at the very least get over a character, or worst case scenarios, just start directing in a lane. The Rimu does not need to reverse a character to be able to activate his effect. He only needs to activate, be on the board at the end of attack to be able to activate his effect. Other things of note in this deck, for the support line, we do have 2 of the 1/1 Hakuro from Slime 2. He's a level assist, and he also has a very unique set of effects. He has, whenever one of your characters triggers a yellow Climax, you can choose a card from your waiting room and then put it underneath him as a marker. And then if you have 2 markers underneath him, you can pay 1 and send the markers to waiting room in order to salvage a yellow card from your waiting room. So this is a really good way to kind of guarantee that you'll have a level 3 Climax, for example, or it's just a very efficient way of getting a pay 1 plus 1. And ultimately, if you do want to run an assist, he's kind of like a natural compression tool where you can kind of just put up to 2 cards underneath him for free for no additional cost, and then that is just 2 less cards going back into your deck when you refresh. We play some counters here and there. We play a level 1 Shuna counter as well as the level 2 Benimaru counter. The counter choices are kind of your preference, but like Randall mentioned in our previous 8 standby deck video, memory counter is very preferred nowadays just because kicking something to memory is so premium. So this is an example of a typical 8-choice deck, but 8-choice, like we mentioned, does have quite a bit of deck building options, and that is one of the powerful pros of 8-choice, where you actually can just build your deck according to your playstyle and how you want to contest other builds. Maybe you want to try to tech against very specific matchups, or maybe you want to have a different gameplay at level 2. So we'll go over some different deck builds, starting with Randall's version of Slime Volume 2 8-choice. Now, take it away, Randall. What do we have today?
All right, so I guess in addressing my deck, I can first talk about some of the cons that we recognize with this deck. So obviously some of the pros, you have the very powerful end game. You have a lot of flexible deck building options because you're really only limited to the 2 combos and the 2 climaxes themselves. And so one of the cons that I identified with the deck was distinct lack of mill. Considering that the level 1 Xion combo doesn't actually help you get through your deck at all, since it's just an on-attack salvage, I did want to include a lot of milling sources that would allow me to safely get through my first deck and not just get left in this state of helplessness in my first deck where I'm just like out a bunch of climaxes, no way to mill. And so some of the choices that I chose to use in my deck were in the level 0 line, particularly the level 0 Rimuru that you guys see here. This is a card that we also ran in the standby build. You guys checked out that video, as well as the level 0 Shizu, which was also featured in the standby list. So these 2 cards both have the ability to mill multiple cards. The level 0 Rimuru being able to get through 5 cards, 2 with the on-play mill, and 3 with the plussing effect, while the Shizu has the ability to go through up to 4. And then, of course, we also do have the 2 copies of the level 0 Fukujiro Rimuru, the I believe it's called the Leader of the Monsters in English. And those cards collectively will hopefully allow us to get through our first deck very cleanly and allow us to get into our second deck very nicely. Now, another weakness that I saw in the Japanese builds is with regards to the double early play package. So the early play condition on the Ranga is that you have to have 2 copies of the Xion early play in your waiting room in order to early play the Ranga and then subsequently bring out the Xion. Now, with other double early play packages, so I guess probably the most recognizable example for English Weiss players would be the Mirai ticket, Chika and Yo from Love Live Sunshine. So the nice thing about that package is that the early play condition doesn't involve having copies of the target in waiting room, whereas this one does. So in Love Live, you would typically do some sort of play like putting the target into stock and then just paying it out and then immediately summoning it out onto the board. However, you're not able to do that in this build, which is very tragic because the 8 choice climaxes would actually allow you to potentially stock the target. And so one play that you could do is that you could use the 1/1 Hakuro support. When you trigger choice climaxes, you can marker cards underneath them, and then you can use that ability to marker Xions and then subsequently send those to waiting room later in order to fulfill Ranga's early play condition. However, in my opinion, I felt like this was too many moving parts for my taste, and so I actually elected to drop the package entirely in favor of a more traditional early play package. So I decided to run 3 copies of the Xion early play, as well as 2 copies of this Shizu early play from Volume 2. So this Shizu early play is 2 or less Climax early play. She gains 500 power for each of your back row Demon Continent characters, bringing her up to pretty reasonable 10-5 power. But most importantly, her on-play effect is on play you can look at up to X cards from the top of your deck, X equaling the number of your Demon Continent characters on stage. Add one of those cards to your hand and send the rest to waiting room. And going with these changes, I also decided to take out the 1/1 Hakuro in favor of a 2/1 Shizu 2K support from the first deck. So something that you sacrifice here by taking out the Hakuro is that obviously the Hakuro would allow you to potentially get yellow climaxes from your waiting room, because his ability allows you to salvage not just any yellow card, not just yellow characters, but also any yellow card, so he would allow you to get back your climaxes. And in order to supplement him being taken out, I decided to put in the Shizu early play with her top check X effect, which will hopefully allow me to get my level 3 climax with more consistency. So those are the main 2 changes with my build with regards to the level 0s, adding more mill options, as well as the level 3s, changing out the early plays to change it into a more traditional style. I did also decide to add a few more changes in the level 1 line, taking out one of the Ramris, adding in some more stock generation with the creating potions Rimuru level 1, as well as the attendance check Rimuru. Just some personal options, as you are able to fit in a lot of different choices into the deck. And those were just some of the cards that I felt would allow me to play the deck more comfortably to my playstyle. So this is my build, and then of course we do have a third build prepared for you guys, so we are going to now transition into Simu's list, where he also has some of his own choices that he has chosen to make with the deck building. So Simu, why don't you go into some of those choices?
No problem. First of all, I want to talk about the level 3 combo a bit. So a quick note about the level 3 combo and kind of the math behind it and how you allocate and calculate resources. So the first thing you want to know about the level 3 combo is that you never want to play more than one of the 3/2 Rimuru onto board. You actually only want to play one, because it summons other copies of itself with 3 stock, which basically mitigates the 2 stock that you would use to play the other Rimurus. So by playing only one Rimuru and having that Rimuru summon the other Rimurus, you are able to drastically lower the cost it takes to get as many resends as possible. Now the math is actually really easy. Basically, for every 2 stock you have, you get an extra attack. So if you only have 2 stock, you can do 1 extra attack. And if you have 8 stock, then you can do 4 extra attacks. And of course, you need to be able to have the target Rimuru to summon out for that extra attack. But that's just an easy way to mathematically, or just to look at your stock and be like, okay, how many attacks do I have this turn? And if you're an odd number, then maybe you have an extra stock to use for a brainstorm or some other effect. Now, going on to my list.
Definitely a great way to visualize, because I know a lot of people, myself included, sometimes we are a bit confused about like exactly how much stock we need, and sometimes we might just try to rely on a trick and trace, which is also a cool thing about this deck, is that if you're running low on hand or running low on choice, since you are scanning multiple times, you do have extra opportunities to trigger choice, and then that can help you fill in the extra stock or hand that you need. And go ahead, Simu.
Okay, yeah, so at my list, I kind of took a different approach from Randall. I basically thought that there's no amount of mill that's going to comfortably save me, and I want to address the other issue, or the other con of the level 1 combo, is that it requires 5 characters on board, and also requires you drawing the combo and the climax without any other help. Now, personally, I have a hard time drawing level 1 climax combos and their respective climaxes, and I don't like to kind of hedge all my, or put all my eggs in one basket. And I generally like having other options to plus and other things to do besides just relying on Climax combos, which is where the level 0 Rimuru clean cut from set 1 comes into play. This clean cut is also an anti-runner, which is amazing in the English meta right now, which is predominantly Kaguya and Data Life favored. And this anti-runner basically tackles two of these matchups very well, especially Kaguya. Actually, I'm a Kaguya player myself, and I just cry whenever I see my opponents play this slime level 0. I basically just can't play the game.
Yeah, well, so Kaguya's biggest strength is definitely its level 0 game with the K runner. K runner by itself will just dictate the advantage of so many matchups, but that card, the removed clean cut that Simu is running in his build, just straight devours K and really takes away one of the biggest advantages that Kaguya has. So if you are looking to play against a lot of Kaguya, definitely consider running this card.
Yeah, and the clean cut actually hits a respectable amount of power along with the Shizu double rare from the new Slime 2 Volume 2 set that can pump it up to 2000 power. And it gives you something to do at level 1 in case you maybe don't have enough characters to field for the level 1 combo, or you don't have the Climax. Then you can even play the Xion without the Climax combo and then use the clean cut to save the Xion to a slot in back row to use on the next turn. In addition to that, I also felt like Xion's actually pretty big, especially if you can land a 1/1 Hakuro behind her, which gives her additional 500 power. And you could play around just keeping your level 1 board alive, which is why I've opted to go into 2 Hakuros and also 2 level 1 counters. If we trigger a choice at level 1, we can easily access our 1/1 counter and protect the Xion. And that way, I don't have to worry too much about finding my advantage elsewhere. For the early play, I also agree with Randall. I don't think the double early play package is very good. And instead of opting for Shizus, which I don't like the early play condition, with 2 or less, it's pretty hard to get in this deck, especially since, again, very low deck control, at least with my approach. Opting instead to max out on the copies of Shuna, which has an early play condition of 4 more other, much easier to get in this deck. And honestly, I just think the end game of this deck is where it's at. So sometimes I don't even early play because I just want to hit 8 stock and kind of like wombo combo my opponent. In playtesting, there are just so many times where I go into level 3 and I look at the damage differential and I'm like, there's no way he's dead, but I don't have anything better to do, so I guess I'll go for it. And they're dead. So definitely this endgame is really powerful. Would highly recommend kind of prioritizing it above almost anything else. If you can get all the attacks safely, it is just such a strong endgame that almost, makes the rest of the deck work despite all its other flaws at every other level.
Yeah, so I think that's something that's quite interesting about the Japanese style list is that they not only decide to invest so much deck space into the double early play, but that they're willing to play this double early play package and then sacrifice a lot of resources because it's not cheap to put this early play package onto the board. And in addition, you also have to pay extra cost for the Xion in order to activate her on attack heal. It seems like they're putting so many eggs into this basket and then sacrificing so much endgame potential that I think both Sam and I agree in the way that we structured our builds that the endgame is worth building towards, and that you don't want to invest all of these resources and all of this attention to this early play package because it's so hard to set up, and then it's hard to even get it onto the board and expensive to do things with it that probably we just both felt that it wasn't worth it.
Right. So there must be good reason why a lot of Japanese players do like this double early play package, right? But one thing that comes to mind is that they value the continuous, at the very minimum, they're gonna get the on attack heal the first time if they want it, and then fairly likely they might get a second one. But then the biggest part probably comes from the fact that it is very large. If they prioritize the level 1 Hakuro, it'll just be a 16k cost turn, which is nothing to scoff at. If they face against a Shirogane behind a Kaguya support, that actually isn't big enough quite by itself. And a lot of I'm not an expert in the Japanese meta, but maybe lists when this 8 choice variant was dominant didn't really play any kind of permanent removal for early plays, maybe no stock bombs or bottom deck bombs. So maybe Xion was just in an environment where it could just stay alive for multiple turns. But I think in general, I do agree with Randall and Simu in the fact that I think the biggest strength of 8th choice is that it is so explosive at level 3, and it kind of feels like you're kind of taking away from the main point of the deck if you are investing this many resources and this many deck slots into this kind of double early play package. So, but you guys can definitely get an idea, right? All of these decks do operate on the same premise of running 8 choice triggers with the same Climax combos, but they have radically different approaches to each of the builds. That is, one of the great things about 8 choice. If you face against someone in 8 choice in tournament, you're not actually exactly sure what they're quite going to do unless they mulligan specific key tells, like for example, if they mulligan a Ranga or the level 3 Xion as part of the package, then you know that's what they're going to be playing. But then if they mulligan like a Xion early play from set 1 or a Shuna early play from set 2, you're not really quite sure what they're doing yet, right? But I think the biggest point of this particular build and why people do regard it as one of, the 3 builds that is actually competitive is that choice trigger is extremely strong. The remove finisher is extremely potent. Well, at the same time, it is a healer, so you don't have to be all in on your final turn. You can be fairly all in, but at the same time, you're very likely to heal back down to 3-0. And then Slime just has a plethora of very good level 0 and 1 options, as well as a very high amount of quality level 2 early play options that you can kind of just get by playing good cards until you get to level 3. Now, whether or not that might be your style, that's really up to you, right? 8 choice is such a diverse deck in terms of deck building that you can honestly just try whatever. But that basically sums up the 8 choice part of the new Slime decks. 8 choice, level 1 Xion combo, level 3 Rimu combo, and everything else, honestly, is just up to you. Anything else you guys want to add, Randall or Simu, before we end this video?
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I can add on to the end is that this truly is a deck of choices. You got your 8 choice Climax, and then outside of that, it's like the world is your oyster kind of deck. You have a lot of different ways that you can play the deck. As Sam described in his list, he thinks that like playing mill options is not worth it, so you can see that sort of playstyle reflected in his deck choices, where he runs cards like the Shuna early play, where it's reliant on your board as opposed to your deck state. Whereas with my list, I'm going for like what I feel is a much more familiar game flow to what I'm used to, where I want to be able to refresh still at level 1, go into a game state where like I'm at level 2 with 2 or less climaxes so I can play my early plays. And that's sort of reflected in the choices that I make as well with cards like the Shizu early play. So definitely a deck that you can experiment a lot of stuff with, try and figure out what you think works best for you.
So I have 2 things. First of all, I do have a question for you, Randall, on one of the cards in your list. I noticed that you're running this Twin Drive Milim. Is there any particular reason or case where you feel like this card is very useful?
Oh yeah, okay, so the thing about choice climaxes is that being able to allocate like stock or hand is very useful, but in the end you're still going to want to like pay them out. Being able to get a stock off of the choice climax or just get extra hand and then immediately pay them out is super nice, potentially triggering into more choices along the way, get more advantage. But I do think that a very interesting interaction that you can do with this particular Milim is with the level 1 Ramrus. Being able to continually call out this Milim and just have her twin drive effect basically on call, I think is super important. I tried to fit more copies into the deck, but in the end, I think 2 is about as much space as I could afford to allocate. But I definitely think it's a super good card to include, just with how much resources you can accumulate off of triggering lots of choice climaxes.
Thank you so much. Last thoughts from me. I think this is definitely one of those decks where you don't quite understand just how powerful the finishing combo is until you've kind of executed it once for yourself. And then from there on, you can really decide what you want to prioritize. So I would highly suggest anybody who's interested in this deck to really just try it for yourself once to just kind of see where the ceiling is and then kind of decide for yourself how you want to get there. It's almost like climbing a mountain. You know, there's different roads you can take. It's all about like kind of that journey, but the summit is this 3-2 ridiculously overpowered combo. So yeah, just give it a shot and see what you guys come up with. We'd love to see what you guys have to like what kind of deck list you guys come up with. You know, feel free to at us on social media or even in the comments of this video. Just let us know what you guys think, how 8 choice should be played, what you guys like to play in this kind of deck.
Sounds good. And that about does it for our 8 choice video. We will have one more deck video for Slime 2 featuring a very familiar yet still very powerful level 1 Shizu build. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you guys next time.